Hello, everyone. Welcome to Casual Watch Talk Sunday Social. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yes, welcome, everyone. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you, Bill. Thanks for joining. And Mark, thanks for joining us in the back there. Well, we've got a New Year show for you. We're going to do some predictions for the upcoming year. But before we do that, let's do a wristwatch check. Pete, do you want to kick us off with the wristwatch check?
One I haven't worn for a little while. The Belarus BR03 GMT. I should really switch my I realise I've got my camera pointing the wrong way, so you're all seeing that back to front. But yeah, that's what I'm wearing today.
Nice.
Yeah, really nice. Dave, what you wearing?
I am wearing my new Swatch watch. Oh, let's see if I can get it to focus. Camera's being a little busy. It's a new Swatch watch, club watch for 2023 that I have.
Okay, what's that, like a house with? Is it art? Is it that?
No, so for you get a Happy Holidays watch from Swatch Club.
Oh yeah.
Where is it? You can see it there.
Oh, okay.
So that's what I'm wearing today because I'm lacing it in the house.
Yeah, I thought their holiday watch had that. Wasn't there one that had like a leather, highly embroidered strap on it?
Oh yeah, that's the Oh, this will sound really asshole-ish. That's the one you buy. That's the one they send you.
Okay,
that one.
Todd, what you wearing?
Been going back and forth here a little bit, but and I apologize, there's not very good light in this closet, but I have the Zenith El Primero flyback from 1999 that I got recently. It's probably one of my most recent acquisitions. Yeah, so
yeah, really nice.
But yeah, this thing keeps just awesome time.
Cool. Yeah, and I'm wearing. I'll go full screen on this one. Okay, I'm wearing the Zodiac. This is the Super Seawood, the 53. Cool, very kindly sent in for review by Mike at Zodiac. So big thanks to him. I've just been gathering my thoughts for the last couple of weeks. Well, the last week or so on it, and I've just written the review. So tune in. There's a lot that I like about it, and then a few things that I think could be improved in a future iteration. But I won't spoil the review for you there.
Nice.
If I can just jump in really quickly.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Yeah. And I blame Dave for this because he was constantly talking about Swatch and had me thinking about things. And yesterday, or a couple of days ago, I saw something, couldn't resist, and had to have a go and bought this.
Oh,
cool. There's a blast from the past there.
Yeah. And look at the doming on that.
Wow.
Yeah. That's a Fifth Element commemorative swatch, which I just thought was hugely fun. It was super cheap.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a nice way that you can just not spend a huge amount of money, but just enjoy watches a little.
The film, The Fifth Element.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know they did that. Wow. So that's was that late 90s, wasn't it, or was it early 2000s? That film.
I cannot remember.
Oh, when would that be? That would
Multipass.
be... Yeah, the Multipass. Jesus. I think that was 90s, was it not? It might have been early 2000s.
Yeah. I think that was one of those films that really, it was so left field.
1997.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I remember it the year I graduated British college. So I would have been, 17. Anyway. Okay, well, we're going to do our predictions for the new year. What should we do, guys? Should we do one each and go round, and then we'll discuss them, and then let us know in the comments what everyone thinks. So, Pete, do you want to kick us off? What's your first prediction for the upcoming year?
Okay, I'm going to go. I'm being really specific, which means there's a high likelihood I'll be completely wrong. I reckon Rolex will re-release the Milgauss in RLX titanium. Rolex are stuck in this bind. Two great tectonic plates. They have to have new product. They can't change anything. They have to have new product. They can't change anything. The Destro was an example of how the desperation that creates. I think this year it's going to break a little bit, and they're going to do it by they're not going to do anything crazy like bring out an actually new watch. But I think they'll take a watch like the Milgauss, put it in a whole new material, and wheel it out as the big new thing. Rolex always do this. They always creep things out in their sort of lesser known parts, or less popular, less discussed parts of the collection, and then bring it across. And I think the Milgauss is a perfect place for it to kind of ease people into the idea that we make titanium watches too. So that's my recommendation.
Yeah, I don't know quite what I think about that. Oh, I don't know, because the Milgauss is definitely in an interesting segment, isn't it? My boss at work, where the sales manager at our place, sales director, I should say, or VP of sales, he just sold his Milgauss. He had the Black Dial one, and the market has softened quite a bit on the Milgauss. I hadn't realized quite how much it had softened, especially on the Black Dial one, which I didn't realize was the least desirable. I think everyone wants the green. It's like a blue dial with a green sapphire, I think, over the top. It's the sapphire is actually got a green hue to it. I wonder why do you think they'll go titanium on the Milgauss? Because originally it was, for anti-magnetic, but then all of them are anti-magnetic now, aren't they, more or less?
I think I think they'll make up a technical reason, but I think it's really because and they'll say whatever they need to say to sell it. But I think it's a watch which has been soft in the market for some years. It's a watch which has been kicking around for a while, needs a bit of a refresh. But it is an existing watch. It's a known quantity, so they don't want to kill it completely. And this is a way of doing typical Rolex, of doing a change without a change, of just moving the ball down the field a meter or so. And they'll come up with some bullshit reason, but ultimately it's marketing.
Okay, awesome. So anybody else have any thoughts on that? Dave, do you have any thoughts on that?
That kind of, I guess, it lines up with something that I'll predict from next year, which you will see more and more brands transitioning models from stainless steel to titanium as a way of refreshing product lines without actually refreshing a product line. Because take exactly the same watch, make it out of something different, but make it out of something that's not that technically challenging for them to change, and you've got a whole new watch. You can charge a premium for it, because most brands charge a bit of a premium the minute you put titanium on it for no particularly logical reason other than it's different. So I think you'll see more. Grand Seiko started already. Pretty much 80% plus of all the Evo 9s that have come out last year were titanium. Rolex have got the RLX titanium, what a name, and Omega have got more and more titanium in the range. Tudor already do lots of titanium. I think that's going to be part of it. And the Milgauss, from a Rolex perspective, would be the logical model if indeed they do decide to refresh stroke reintroduce or whatever they do with that model. That would be the one that actually there would be some narrative there as well, because it would play into the whole fully anti-mag thing, because titanium being non-ferrous is going to just sing to that whole narrative more than steel would do. So I think that's possible. Never second guess Rolex, because they'll either launch nothing, launch everything, or completely boot it right out of the park with something left field.
Yeah,
Mark saying titanium is the new black. Todd, do you have any thoughts on that, or we'll move on?
Yeah, I mean, basically what Pete was saying. I have my own Rolex thing, but I want to say two words, and we'll see if they come true. You ready? Cellini tourbillon. Do I get anything with that outlandish prediction at all?
Okay.
If it comes true, I am the best sage on the planet, but there's a 99.9999% true that will not happen. But why not? Let's just throw caution to the wind and come up with the least likely watch that Rolex would use to house a tourbillon, assuming they were to ever try to make one.
Okay. We're going to do a video near the end of the year, aren't we? Where we're going to revisit these and see how, if we had any spot on, or whether we got them, wildly wrong. But anyway, we'll move on. Dave, did you have what's your first prediction for the upcoming year?
I guess not so much a prediction, more an inevitability that every Swatch store globally is going to have MoonSwatches in it at some point next year.
Ooh.
It's going to happen. It's literally now a matter of time. You've seen it through December. Suddenly, supply freed up significantly, and all the demand for the kind of grey market dropped right off its arse. So I think you're going to find they'll suddenly become globally available. Whether they appear on the website, who knows? They might towards the back end of the year when supply frees up even more. But you're going to see MoonSwatches everywhere.
And do you think if they're everywhere, we might get a sense of the colours that people just bought just because they were there? Do you think there's sort of like some colours that became least desirable?
I think actually, to be honest with you, what it'll do is it'll start appearing on the wrist of folk who probably wanted one, but then saw the grief that it was. They're not watch people necessarily, but they're true Swatch customers, and they'll buy it as it was intended. A bright coloured fashion watch that's a bit of a nod and homage to an Omega Moon watch, and they'll buy it for probably the real reason to kind of invigorate Swatch as a brand and get folk back involved with Swatch. And hopefully that will see Swatch begin to lift again. We all pick holes in these things. Oh, this one doesn't look quite like what a load of nonsense. These people will just buy it and go, oh, that's bright yellow and that's quite funky, and wear it in the summer, which is kind of what it was always meant to be, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I mentioned it. I did a video on the MoonSwatch as everyone else did, and I was saying that there is that G-Shock have been eating their lunch for a long time in the fashion segment, haven't they? And I think the MoonSwatch is their opportunity to eat back at G-Shock a little bit more and make it really cool, But anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd like to get I'm not a fan. I'm like you, Sam, with the debacle that occurred. I'm not a big MoonSwatch thing, but I would like to get the mission to Mars, just because my company builds the Orion space capsule, which in theory will eventually take astronauts to the moon and then, of course, to Mars. So that would be pretty cool just to kind of have that piece. But other than that, I really don't have a desire.
Yeah.
I completely agree with Dave.
Yeah.
I think the MoonSwatch is going to reveal, already it's revealed two of our weaknesses as watch collectors. One, we have no idea how to value cool. And two, we have really short attention spans.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can't get something within 3 months, it's all your fault. And I hate you for it. And next year, it's going to reveal our third weakness, which is we're fickle beasts. And when we can just walk into a Swatch store and just pick one up, we all will.
Yeah, you might be right. Yeah. We have a question coming in. Has a titanium movement ever been done? What would be the advantages? So Omega make a titanium Aquaterra, don't they? Which is like $50,000 or something. So yeah, there is a titanium movement available in a watch.
Yeah, that was done for McElroy, wasn't it? It was done in 2018, 2019, something like that. The one with the recessed crown.
Yeah, it had the recessed crown. Yeah, Christopher Ward, or that's what Mike France said. He's second only to Omega with the recessed crown. But yeah, I don't know whether there is. I mean, it's anti-magnetic, I guess. But Mark's saying that it can be brittle at that.
Yeah.
But isn't the Richard Mille the really thin one? Isn't that titanium, or at least it's got titanium?
Oh, the Ferrari thing.
Yeah,
possibly might be as well. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, Todd, you're up. What's your prediction for the upcoming year?
All right, I'm gonna jump. So part of what I'm gonna say was after watching Pete's rant on 2023 watches. So in a way that kind of set the stage for me. So what I'll say is that in reality, Rolex won't do anything other than either move a crown, change a bezel, rebrand a metal as their own, or try to compete with GS on dials. That's what I'm thinking we'll get out of. That's my prediction, at least for Rolex. What we're going to get from them largely.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Rolex is a black hole of information, so we just don't know until they decide to do something like, put a crown on the left side, or something like that.
Yeah, I think you can kind of get a sense of what Rolex can do if by looking back at what they've done in the past. They can't change it. They can't change the fundamental design of a watch. They can't get rid of a watch, and they can't bring a whole new watch in. They can't change the fundamental case. They can't change any of the fundamental dial layouts of their core sports watches. They can on the Datejust. The Datejust is, particularly the ladies, that's a real playground for them. But these are just things that they can't do. And then that creates sort of a box within which they can mess around. So, yeah, they can change a bezel material. They can, and I think I'll go so far as to say they'll change a case material. But I think you're right. I think the box they have built for themselves doesn't allow them to innovate.
Yeah, I think you're right there. It's going to be an interesting watches and wonders, isn't it? Well, I'll go with my first prediction. I think that the 90s is going to come back in fashion, and we're going to see gold tags and like gold Breitlings. I think that era, the Wolf of Wall Street. I think the Wolf of Wall Street era is going to come back.
Jesus, man, don't tempt fate. I think you might be right, though. Yeah, it's about time for the 90s to make a roundabout, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. It's funny because over here, I noticed this year, especially in the fashion sort of stores in the US, the Kappa jackets were back in fashion, and the Elise or whatever it was, and Fila shoes that came back in fashion, didn't they? All of those, and Champion, and all of those 90s sort of clothing brands came back in. So I think it's gonna hit the watch world. I would be interested to see a gold, because I think they were gold plated, weren't they? But it'd be interesting to see like a gold plated tag or something along those lines. Okay, well, that was my prediction. We'll go back around again. Pete, what was your next one?
You know what? I'm going to go for really. Now I'm going to hit to the bleachers and go all out. Omega. Sorry, get this right. Breitling is going to do a Rolex and buy a movement supplier. I'm going to say, and I don't think that this is likely, but what I would say is they've sold half their company. They are swimming in cash. They're getting ready for an IPO. They want to get more expensive, but the market will really only let them do that if they've got an in-house movement. They don't have the internal capacity to make 50 to 60,000 movements a year, which is what they need. Buying a brand like Concepto would just give it to them tomorrow. And then buy the brand this year, spend all year tooling it up, getting it ready to produce new watches, new movements. 2024, you announce the watches with those movements. 2025, you start jacking your prices up. 2026, you sell the company. So, like I said, I'm going to say that this is the year Breitling buys a movement maker, buys the capacity to produce 50 to 70,000 three-handers a year.
Okay. You're not convinced, Dave?
I need to be careful what I say here. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think you'll see something on the movement front. Yep, I'm pretty safe.
I know. Yeah, I know there's movement on the movement front, and I also understand that they're having huge capacity issues on the movement front,
and have been having for a considerable period of time. A certain watch they might have launched the second half of 2022. What's this? This is 2022. That ended up with a pretty low value relative to retail price in it in the lineup. Might have had something to do with that issue. I don't think they'll buy a movement manufacturer. I don't think there's anyone that's big enough and stupid enough to jump into that because they wouldn't pay the money for it. That's
probably true.
The way Breitling work, the way a certain individual that runs that company works is if he can have it for the lowest common denominator, he'll go for it, but he'll not get what he needs by paying low buck.
Fair enough. Well, Dave, what was your next prediction for next year?
Oh, things are about to get really expensive and relatively speaking, relatively easy to get, but at a price. You'll see a lot of brands will pull back on production volume, put prices up, but if you've got the money and the desire, you'll be able to get things that have previously been much more difficult to get. That's not to say suddenly you can walk into any store and pick a Rolex up. That's a little bit of a bubble in its own right. But relatively speaking, you're about to see between maybe the start of 22 and by the middle of 23, things are going to be 25%, in some cases more expensive than they were at the start of 2022. They're going to pull back on volume of that kind of mid-market area, and certain things you'll be able to get it because these Swiss companies aren't daft. They can see what the recession and inflation and everything else is going to do to the marketplace. And the way they'll keep their revenues high is they'll sell less for more money. But you've then got to appeal to a market who have the money and will want it, and they'll want them to spend. Therefore, those things will be available. It's just you'll have to pay for them.
Yeah, because the millionaires definitely got a lot richer, didn't they, over COVID and probably during the recession as well. So you think it's going to be more important to start relationship building with ADs for pieces that you're after. They'll be sold more through like a relationship basis.
That will always come into a certain extent, but you're going to see a markedly lower number of people buying watches, and certainly in any volume. Like a lot of people who maybe bought 2 or 3 watches a year might buy 1 watch a year. A lot of folk who were maybe thinking about buying that one nice watch next year won't buy that one nice watch. They'll be worrying about other things they've got to spend their money on. And suddenly, these Swiss brands are all about turnover. Most of them don't actually really care too much about the product to put out relative to how much money they are bringing in. And they will do whatever they can to bring that money in.
Yeah, I think they learnt during COVID that they can. It's really quite nice being able to make more money selling fewer watches, and they really have. They learnt that during COVID, and I think they've continued to keep that discipline. If you look at stocks of like last 2 or 3 year watches on grey marketplaces like Chronext and Jomashop, there's very, very few. They're not playing that massive overproduce and dump at the AD's game anymore. So I think Dave's absolutely onto something there.
And the other thing you'll see as well on the back of that is less and less ADs and more sole brand boutiques, albeit they might be franchised. It'll just that march towards you go into a store and it's an Omega boutique, it's a Rolex boutique, it's a Breitling boutique, it's a Tag boutique. All they have is that brand. They've got the narrative, they've got the upper hand, they've got the control. There will be no discounts, there'll be no money off. It'll be pay the ticket price or get out my shop. And you see that carry on, and that just feeds all into that same narrative.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think when we saw the brands no longer offering discounts, at least some of the big ones like Cartier and Omega, for example, where they're just not going to. The price is the price, and I think that's, to your point, that's the first, one of the first salvos in that price escalation that we're gonna, that are a sign of what you're saying, I believe. Yes.
Okay. Thanks. Somebody's just saying my audio sounds bad, so I've upped the volume, but let me know.
It garbled it. It was like it was breaking up a little bit there, Sam.
Yeah, I'll have to try and work that out. I noticed that on the 5-hour live stream that it was the volume is a little bit intermittent, so I'm trying to have it a little bit closer. Todd, what's your next prediction?
Yeah, I was trying to get my little list here. I was trying to think about this a little bit, but in the line of what was just brought up, I think that we're going to see at least one or two brands go away. That's my prediction. It seems to be it's awfully hard. It seems like they can put these on life support and somebody else will buy them. And not counting the ones that get reborn from just name only. But does a Ulysse Nardin go away in some way? I mean, or Chapard, which I think actually they do pretty well with women's watches, but I'm not so. But they're under the umbrella of the Swatch group, right? Or is it Richemont? I always get confused a little bit, but I don't know. You know, if you're under a big group, you can stay alive. But I'm questioning. You know, some of these companies have been out there for a long time. We may see one or two go away.
I don't think that's. I think some will. It'll not necessarily be the ones that you think it are. There's a lot of them out there that you look at and you think they can't possibly be selling a lot of watches, but seem to have an awful lot of money because there's a huge amount of them. Like you mentioned, Ulysse Nardin. One thing they've got that most folk don't realize is they've got lots of patents up their sleeve. And, you know, you want to play the silicon game. They were number one in that game. You know, they've got lots of these little secrets that bring significant amount of cash in to their businesses that support, you know, that's their life support. And it will continue for as long as they've got that upper hand. You're right, though, there are brands that I think some of the independents will need to walk back because the independents, in a lot of cases, not maybe the more established ones like, let's say, the Mosers or the MB&Fs or these guys, but some of the kind of ones that are coming up through the ranks, they're typically bought by new money, people in that kind of middle upper management positions that are maybe moving through trading floors and cities and stuff like that. And suddenly an awful lot of them are going to be thinking twice about where they put their money just because of the general state of how things are. So a few of those brands will just need to be careful because some of them don't have particularly strong foundations. The big established ones, generally, there's a big enough a pot of money that you can't see. It's they're a bit of an iceberg, some of these companies. What you see is not necessarily what's under the surface.
Yeah, and Ulysse Nardin made that grinder winding system, didn't they? That was arguably one of the best ways to wind a watch because any motion in any direction, even slight. I mean, that has amazing implications in engineering beyond watchmaking, but they've obviously got the patent to that, even though it's got a weird name.
And sometimes some of these brands have engineering capacity. You know, if you look at, for example, well, you said Ulysse Nardin and Girard Perregaux, both of them were owned by Kering. Both of them bought out from Kering just in the last year, stand their own. But, for example, Donis Cadran, who basically make the enamel dials for the entire Swiss watch industry, is owned by Girard Perregaux, Ulysse Nardin. So they're not going anywhere. They're not going anywhere. You know, I've been through that. I've been through that factory, and you know, everything from Patek dials to Zenith dials to anything you can possibly imagine that's enameled is coming out of those guys, and that's where they make the real money. Sell a few watches is not making them the money. Making those parts for the other brands is where they make their money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they make and sell a lot of silicon escapements and things like that for the industry too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that it's really tricky trying to predict what brands will and won't make it because you look at there's a lot of brands that I don't understand how they still exist. I don't understand, like, how does Edox and a Turner and how are they operating? But I think at the end, because they don't have that big store of IP, they don't have this other industrial capacity. But I think in a lot of cases, when you boil it all down, there's some family member or there's some individual who's really into this. And you know what? They'll just keep the brand on life support forever and ever because it's what they do.
It's a tax thing. It's a tax sink for someone.
And often it's a tax sink. So I think the brands, if I try and imagine who is a brand that's most likely to get the axe, it would be a brand that is probably owned by a group and where the group is just realizing it's costing me more than it's making. It's maybe doing bad things for my group look, and no one has any emotion. There's no family or anything invested in this anymore. So they're perfectly happy to take it out the back of the potting shed and put a bullet in its head. if I had to name a brand that was going to get a bullet next year, I don't think it's going to happen. But my most likely candidate that I can put a name to, Bomb and Mercier.
Somebody mentioned that in the comments. Actually, I think it was Boracic Time mentioned in. Here it is. Breitling might buy Bomb and Mercier for $1. Interesting. In fact, before I do mine, I'll just flash up a couple of other predictions that we've had in the comments here. So we've got Watches 63 says ceramic bezel on the full gold Daytona. Orange Hand says, my prediction for 2023 is a return to discounts on many brands and availability of non-hype Rolex models will improve. In other words, it will be 2019 again. I don't know.
I think availability, there's a bit of credence that availability in some brands and some models will get a bit better for sure, but you're actively watching brands pull back volume and go to this kind of soul lineage in terms of to market, and they're doing that deliberately because they don't want 2019 again. They've fought really hard to stop discounting and to stop this perception that 10, 15, 25% off is the norm. They've gone away from that, and they've gone away from it by controlling the market. And they would rather make less watches and sell fewer for more money than let discounting come back again. For the number of conversations I've had with them, they said that is what will kill them. If discounting continues, it's a race to the bottom. That will affect their turnover and their bottom line, and they will do everything to protect that because they've fought really hard to get away from that.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. And then we've got, James Duffy, first of all, agreed with the titanium comment. And then he said, safe prediction, more revival brands like Smith's, Yema Fortis, Nevada Grenken, etc., slowly losing the revival brand stink like Doxa seems to have done. So I think it means they'll become more legitimate. I've got a Nevada Grenken actually coming in for a review soon, so I'm interested to see one. Okay. Let's go back to the comments here. My next one is, I think next year will be, I think two things will be done till we're sick of them. First, integrated bracelets, and then left-hand drive crowns. I think those two things are going to make it into more. Although I think Zenith will do a really good integrated bracelet, but I think it will play itself out similar to like the colored dials did. I think a little bit this year that's just gone. I think integrated bracelets and left-hand drive crowns will be big, and then we'll just get sick of them by the end of the year.
I think you're right on left-hand drive. You're beginning to see that. There's so many brands are slowly picking up on it, and almost Rolex doing that in 22 is almost giving them the green light to charge forward with that idea, because suddenly they've looked at that and gone, okay, well, if Rolex can do it, we can do it too. Integrated bracelets, I'm less sure about. I think that's been doing the rounds now for quite a while, and actually it's expensive for a brand to do an integrated bracelet. Even a bad one is pretty pricey because it's a whole re-engineer on the case, the whole shooting match. Just coming up with a bracelet or a strap that you can bosh onto a relatively normal lugged case is not the hardest thing in the world. Engineering a whole new case to fit an integrated bracelet and then doing a bracelet is more challenging. I think we're more likely to see the almost absolute proliferation of quick release bracelet stroke straps across everything that you buy. But they're not going to go for a quick release spring bar. They're going to go for a proprietary system, and you can only buy bracelet straps from that brand, a la IWC, a la yeah, I mean, the Garmin one and the IWC one, strangely enough, are actually very similar, that little center clip that pulls back. Yeah. But they're all going to come up with some weird patented derivation of how to fit your quick release strap to your watch, so that A, you can only get the parts from them, and B, they can do the arse out of any aftermarket strap companies that try and make straps that fit their watches, because they've suddenly dawned on them there's big money to be made there. And I think it was who was it I saw? One of the strap companies has been given a cease and desist and been given only a couple of months now to stop doing straps for, I believe, Cartier. because they were making aftermarket straps that fitted Cartier. I think it might have been Santos's, and they came to an agreement. But by whenever it's March, that's it, no more, or else they get sued.
I think that's a great prediction about the quick release systems and them being proprietary, like Apple used to do with its Thunderbolt connectors and things like that.
Yep.
Pete, back round to you. Did you have another prediction for next year?
Okay, a little bit tongue-in-cheek one for this year. Omega are going to release lots and lots of great watches that we're all going to love. None of them will be in store until 2024, and they'll confuse the catalog even more, and it'll just become an even bigger mess to try and work your way through. That's pretty much my prediction.
But does this link into your one, Dave, about if you've got the money, you might be able to get these? It's just if maybe the casual buyer can't.
I think it'll be interesting to see what Omega do, because they're at a bit of a crossroads. They have made some big changes that have filtered through now. You can see them. They haven't released that limited edition Speedmaster now in a year or more. They've launched the Snoopy. They have missed dates that 2 years ago they would never have missed in their life, like the Last Man on the Moon just a few months ago. Didn't get signified. There was no release. There was no watch. There was nothing about it, not even on social media. You can guarantee a couple of years ago there would have been a limited edition watch to signify that event. I think they are slowly beginning to realise their catalogue is too big, it's too complicated, and I think it might be the opposite. I think you'll see very little from them next year. I think what you'll see is this continuation of drip feeding out models that already exist, like, for example, the Snoopy will continue to be delivered, the 321 will continue to deliver. I think they'll push more into precious metals. I think you'll see more and more Sedna Gold, Moonshine Gold, pieces that already exist that they'll suddenly bring out in gold with a significant 5-figure price tag. And they'll move up into the market, because you've seen them do it with Speedmaster. I think you'll start to see them doing it in other ranges as well. And I think they're going to start pushing the Constellation range again harder.
I mean, I would love them to do that. I mean, when I did a series on CEO for a day, and what you just described is pretty much what I would have loved to see Omega do. The only other thing I would like to, and I know this is going to upset a lot of people because it's not historic, blah, 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 but you know what? Sometimes you got to change. I think they've got to take their Seamaster collection especially and at least cut it into 2 and maybe 3 and have the Aquaterras as a standalone collection. I'd probably do the same with the Planet Ocean. But there's so many great watches that just kind of get lost. And they've just rationalized their collections far too much and made them far too deep, and there's too much nesting.
Yeah, you don't hear much about the Planet Ocean, do you? I can't remember the last Planet Ocean that was released. I mean, I've reviewed a few. I reviewed that quirky Michael Phelps one.
Yes, you can. The Ultra Deeps.
Ultra Deeps.
Oh, they were under the Planet Ocean line. They weren't their own. There you go, confusion. Yeah, I thought they were.
Make my point.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Interesting. Okay. Dave, did you have another prediction for next year?
Yeah, Quartz Mark II. It's coming. Quartz will make a significant comeback in certain brands, and I'm talking at premium price points. High-end engineered quartz in nice cases. You can already see it with Grand Seiko, where they've always obviously had 9F in there. They've always had premium quartz, unlike a lot of brands. But there's more of them coming, and I will be amazed if you don't see most of the brands begin to push some quartz narrative into there again, because it's relatively safe for them as well from an engineering point of view. In terms of investment in movements and stuff, it's relatively inexpensive compared to doing mechanical movements. And I think you'll start to see that, because it'll allow them to offer very strong value proposition watches that look good and look expensive, but at price points that might be attainable in the kind of current market atmosphere.
I think you're absolutely spot on with this one. I had mine, but I refined mine a little bit more to people are going to become more aware of the citizen watches, their high precision quartz. People will start comparing them against Grand Seikos, and I think Casio might even, and they have the Oceanus, but I think they will step up to these high precision where it's 4 or 5 seconds a year that they're losing. I think you're spot on with this. This feeds into one of yours as well, doesn't it, Pete? Where you were thinking Breitling was going to come out with a new Anidigi.
Yeah, that's not even a prediction I've made. It's because it's based on such solid rumors I've got from people that the aerospace is being overhauled next year. It's one of the only parts of the collection that hasn't been overhauled under George Kern. And I believe it's getting a new movement. Interestingly, on that one, they're really struggling for movement availability at the moment with the quartz movements. There's a couple of their quartz watches that they actually took off their catalog. They took them off the website for a couple of months last year because they simply couldn't get movements for them. And then when the movements became available, they came back. I think they want to find a new movement manufacturer. They'll probably call it a manufacture movement because it'll be made for them, and that'll happen. It's interesting I so hope you're right there, Dave. I've got a video I'm just finishing up on my hopes, fears, and dreams sort of video for what I'd like to see. And one of the things I want to see is the Swiss, and I'll expand it a little bit to say the Swiss and the Germans take quartz seriously. And by that, I mean, don't use quartz as this is our way of making a cheap watch, but instead say, if we use quartz, we can do things that you can never do with a mechanical watch. So let's do that.
Well, you say that. I think it's interesting. Last master release from Omega was a quartz. Was the Mars timer, wasn't it?
That's exactly right.
And that's a premium. That's a premium price point. What, 6,000-ish UK, something like that. Titanium, quartz, Speedmaster, premium brand, premium price point. Ticks all the boxes for things we've been talking about to a certain extent. So we've got that. You've also got FP's urine, obviously with the Elegante. That's getting, it's been in the range for a wee while now, but it's getting talked about more and more. There's quite a few releases. The Grand Seiko limited edition. What the hell was it called? Not the Snowscape. They did that limited edition 1,200 piece quartz with this display case back this year that sold out instantly as well. I think there's more and more of that going to make it. And there will be folk kicking up all sorts of hell going, well, it's not a real watch. Well, actually, yes, it actually is a real watch. It's, there's amazing things can be done with quartz if they put them to it. And we should remember when quartz watches first came out, they were considerably more expensive than anything mechanical.
Yep. They were. I've got my grandfather's LCD Casio that 1976, and that was some decent money at the time. Yeah, you're right. I think this is spot on. And this is next year. If I buy a watch, it will likely be another quartz watch. I was really impressed with Seiko. I love the Super Quartz from Breitling, and I'm definitely the Citizen watch or a Grand Seiko quartz definitely in my future. I think awesome. So Todd, you're up next. Did you have?
I'm up next. I'm going to put something out there that's probably not that crazy. Although I did predict in a separate line somewhere, I predicted that Rolex would come out with their Deep Core watch, which will actually be able to go to the center of the earth and not be able to withstand the pressure that makes diamonds. And they'll come up with the technology, and it'll cost them as much as a small country, and no one will want it. But because they've built it, there will be people that will buy it. Anyhow, my real thing is that I think we're going to see some interesting technical innovations from some of the watchmakers that we know well, and some that maybe don't, like what we see with Christopher Ward. So I think we're going to see some interesting innovations. One of the things that still hasn't been talked a lot about is
Oh, Pete, you traded your bad connection onto Todd.
No, what happened with me is the battery in the camera I was using as my webcam just died. So
Yeah,
I'm onto my webcam.
Well, maybe Todd's been maybe he was just about to hit on a prediction that's actually happening, and there's some nefarious people have killed his internet. Well, whilst
we've been tapped.
Yeah, whilst he's getting his internet connection back, I'm going to do a little bit of a cheeky one, and I know it's a cop out, but somebody had to say it. Bioceramic Seamaster.
I don't think so.
Honestly, I don't think they'll do it. I'm not saying they're not going to ever do it. They're certainly not going to do it next year because they've got so much milk to get out of that cow from the Speedmaster yet, because it's barely touched the sides, literally barely touched the sides, because they're still, if you think about it, that's not deliberately, no matter what people say and what they kid you on, the reason it's not on their website and the reason it's not in every Swatch store has got nothing to do with some grand plan. It's because they're pumping them out in massive volume every day and still can't even touch the sides of the demand that there is for it. That's why it's not on the website and why it's not in the stores. So until they get to a point of saturation with that watch, they won't dilute it in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a prototype or two out there of a Seamaster, and maybe I think there was a rumor, wasn't there? 50 Fathoms might be. They might have had a prototype of that one out there.
I can absolutely assure you there is absolutely a prototype of a Seamaster out there, 100%. And whether it was going to be Omega or another brand within the greater Swatch group is absolutely true as well, because this was done to save Swatch, as in not Swatch the group, but Swatch the plastic watch company, because it's been on a downward spiral for the best part of probably nearly 2 decades now, and it needed something to get attention back. They were possibly going to pigeon it also to one of their other premium brands that was in a similar position, but I think they took a sensible suggestion, which was attach it to something that's successful and is doing well, and the other brand sees off the back of it, which, and I don't care what anyone says, it was a strong marketing genius. As to whether the whole thing was well thought through in its entirety, that's a whole different question. It grew arms and legs of its own, but that was a masterstroke in doing something that has reinvigorated and brought money into that group and has got millions of people engaged watches, most of whom didn't give a toss about watches before.
Yeah, my opinions softened a little bit more around it being.
Yeah, I totally agree with
Yeah, you're back.
You're back. You're all right, Pete. Maybe that was it. Maybe he just totally agrees. That's it. Okay, well, we were going to go back around, but I wonder if Pete's having an issue. But
I think he's frozen.
Yeah.
Oh, he's frozen now, hasn't he?
Yeah. Let me just remove him from the stream, and then I'll bring him back. Dave, have you got any other feelings about what might be coming down the pipe next year?
Oh yeah, I mean, mine is a bit tongue-in-cheek, my last one, but my last one is basically that whatever we predict is like not what's going to happen in any way, shape, or form. And if we get it right, it's by fluke rather than anything.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we should have had like a
disclaimer.
Yeah, disclaimer. None of this
we don't want to be like that advert that Pepsi put out about getting a fighter jet, because we don't want like any of these folk in the audience suing us and saying, you said this was going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Watching this live stream, I want my fighter jet.
Yeah, that's an amazing documentary on Netflix if you're at a loose end.
Yeah. Sorry, my connection dropped out. Just I was going to totally agree with Dave. I think the chances of Swatch trying to give an alternative Swatch in 2023 is pretty low. I think there is so much more for milk to get out of that cow. I think the big question now it's fascinating looking at the FH numbers for the exports of watches. Like that real bottom end. What's the bottom one? £200, 200 Swiss francs or something. Remember, that's wholesale. So watches up to about 400 Swiss francs. That has just been dying. That's just been falling through the floor. And I've been watching that a little bit. That's actually been holding steady and growing. And I can only imagine that is all MoonSwatch. So that's a release. That is a release that has changed the entire direction of an entire segment of an entire country's industrial direction.
And then when you bring it back into it, one company, the bottom line of one company.
And so when you start saying things like, and I must admit, so when people and like yourself, Sam, have said, well, they could just produce more. Look at what they're doing, and they just still can't make enough.
Yeah,
I mean, there must be millions of watches.
I'll give you a number. When I was actually lucky enough to be at the Swatch factory in the middle of 2022, MoonWatches, they are producing 10,000 units a day. That is a ludicrous number of watches. And people think, that a Swatch watch is just like a machine that goes bang, bang, bang and pumps them up. They're not. They're more involved to make than you think they are. They're not quite as simple as a plastic molding. They actually are something that kind of lives and breathes and does things. But 10,000 units a day, every day. You do the math. That's quite a lot of watches.
Yeah. So I think the big question, and I don't think it's going to get answered this year. I think it'll be, next year, 2024, will be, will they do another one? I think that's a certainty. But then it's a case of, what do they want to do? Do they want to keep using already really popular watches to continue to bolster Swatch? Or conversely, do they want to use Swatch now as a way of leveraging brands that themselves need some cover? And so, my two, and Nick Hayek has said that this is never going to happen, but I don't believe him when he says this. I think the two obvious ones, if you're going to do that, would be a Blancpain 50 Fathoms, a Swatchy Fathoms or something. Or if you want to keep it as a chronograph, a Breguet Type 20 type thing.
I wonder whether that would
I think most. Sorry, only go, Sam.
No, I just was going to say, I wonder whether, if you look at the Speedmaster's got so much history to it that it's an easy history for people to understand. Like if you're like the casual watch buyer, like, oh, this watch went to the moon. But like a Breguet or a 50 Fathoms, I mean, the 50 Fathoms would take a little bit more of a story, but the Breguet.
Yeah, but I suppose you're not trying to pull the same trick a second time. And I think that's the mistake. People are going to say, well, they want to do the same thing as they did with the Speedmaster again. But we've had the Speedmaster, we've had the MoonSwatch, we've had those lines. Now what you want to do is not necessarily try and recreate that, but rather leverage that. And say, I can take that attention and then use that, exactly everything you said. It's a terrible indictment on Swatch that they have to explain to Swatch Group, that they have to explain the 50 Fathoms to people. That's a pain in the ass. That's hard work explaining it to them. On the other hand, giving them a $150 version that's in bioceramic that they can sell. And it's just like that MoonSwatch thing. Remember that? The people standing in the queue? You can jump that whole 20 years of explaining to people and just inject them with hype.
Maybe.
I think the challenge would be, it has to have a degree of volume associated with it, because Swatch watch as a business and as a product only works if there's a reasonable degree of volume. I mean, the best will in the world, nothing from Breguet. You do a Swatch Breguet, how many might you sell a year? A few thousand probably, because no one have a toss. And that's a sad indictment on the Breguet, to be fair. And it'd be the same with the 50 Fathoms. I think the most likely, if they do it again, is they'll either just let it and see this one out and that'll be fine and they'll be back on top again, or it'll be a Seamaster with the Bond connection.
Yeah, I was going to say that because it's easy. This is the James Bond watch now in
Easy
plastic.
to sell to the public. You would sell shit tons of them. You could arguably you would sell more of them than even you would sell in the MoonSwatch, and you could do all the movie collaborations that there've been, through the years, all the different themes, colors, all sorts of stuff. I mean,
Swatch have already done that, haven't they? Yeah, Swatch have already done, the Doctor Knows. They've already done the Bond themes, and they've done it. I think they've done it twice over. Maybe I think they did.
At bare minimum, they've done it twice. Yeah, they've done quite a few collabs, but that would be this one to me. But we will see.
Yeah.
But you're right. Maybe too soon. Maybe it's too soon next year to see those coming through. My last one here was that I think that bezels next year. I think grey black bezels are going to be a thing. Only because I've seen it on my speed timer here. But I think more brands are going to do it. Maybe Rolex might do a grey black bezel.
You're trying to sell out to Hodinkee, Sam. You're trying to sell out to Hodinkee again. I've told you about this pitch.
Hey, they could buy me 100 million or whatever deal they got. I think grey and black is going to be the new blue and red.
I don't disagree. There's a lot more grey. I think grey dials, grey bezels. I think grey will be another colour that will come back in.
Absolutely. Anybody has any other prediction that we missed out? Go on, Todd. Yeah.
I have one more. And I'll be famous if this comes true. I'm expecting that at some point, maybe it's not next year, but at some point we're going to have probably a new brand pop up. And what they're going to do is they're going to make watches entirely out of recycled implanted body parts from people that get cremated. That's, in the funeral industry, there's a huge amount of titanium and all this exotic material that are used, replacement hips, knees, what have you. Could you imagine a watch, meteorite dials? No big deal. What if we have a watch that's made out of what was formerly in human beings? I mean, I could see something wacky like that coming out.
That's a whole new kind of provenance. I don't want a Bremont that has part of Stephen Hawking's old desk.
Right.
I want a Bremont that's got part of Stephen Hawking in it.
Right.
Yeah, it's got some famous person's titanium hip. Or something.
What we need is like a 60, 70-year-old famous celebrity who's had a lot of cosmetic surgery, has been in a Mack car crash and has had a titanium hip, and you could have the whole bloody watch made out of them. Yeah. The whole silicon could come out of them. Yeah. There's your
have limited editions limited editions for a specific celebrity. So, like somebody famous dies, and you're right, he has two hips. And you can only make so many watches out of those hips. So that would be your limited edition of Aaron Rodgers, sorry, Aaron. No, we don't want you to die anytime soon.
Somebody says it. Soylent Watches might be the name of the brand.
That's okay.
Soylent Watches. Somebody.
I want to run off and trademark that now.
Yeah. Soylent Watches. Yeah. I suppose. Yeah, I suppose it would only. I immediately thought, wow, that would only matter if you knew the person. Would that be weird if you were wearing
I'm wearing mom on my wrist. It's like.
Well, they do with the diamonds, don't they? I mean,
the whole diamond thing's. I think the whole diamond thing's a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, jump in with one last. Yeah. One last serious one, I think, because I think we're. And it really touches on something Dave said earlier that watch brands are going to want to bring more and more boutique stuff and take it away from multi-brand sellers. I think, and I've heard rumors that this is already occurring, I think that the multi-brand watch dealers will try and deal with that problem by themselves investing in watch brands. And I understand that the Hourglass is a major investor in the Girard-Perregaux-Ulysse Nardin concern because they lost AP and they lost some other sellers. I think you're going to see Watches of Switzerland, the Hourglass, and a bunch of those brands, a bunch of those big chains investing in watch brands.
Yeah, I think is it Booker that owns Chanel or over here, or are they partly owned Chanel? which is a big brand in the US.
Yeah, that's right. I think they own Ternol in full. I think
they bought it all in full. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I mean, Watches Switzerland Group's slightly different. Inches, they're obviously UK start, but they've got a big market presence now in Scandinavia and in the US. But they are pretty much the partner, certainly in the UK and Scandinavia, and more so in the US. They are the primary partner for standalone boutiques. And that they've safeguarded their future. They're effectively saying, wherever there's an opportunity, we'll take it almost de facto. If I look, my home city, Glasgow, we had a Rolex boutique and a Omega boutique. That was pretty much what we had. Everything else was Mappin and Webbs or Watches of Switzerland or Smith or all the usual ADs. And since the end of COVID, we've now got Rolex, Omega, Longines, Tudor, Tag, Breitling, and there's a few more. And AP's opening up as well. All in, Glasgow's a decent sized city, but it's not a big city. I mean, it's a less than 1 million people city. All the major brands are now boutique, and they're all predominantly Watch the Switzerland Group. I think you're right though. What you say, all the independent brands, lots of independent brands, there are in them that you don't realise is in them, and it quite often is big, well-established, family-owned, strong ADs that have got money in them because it's the way they see of protecting their future lineage.
Yeah, I mean, I bought my Rolex through Mayors, which is, I mean, it's a Rolex boutique owned by Mayors, and I believe Mayors is owned entirely or partly by Watches of Switzerland.
Yeah, I know. Certainly on the battle lines within, I went to buy a watch that I liked, and I went into Watches of Switzerland to talk about it because they were advertising it, and they had no choice but to direct me to the JLC AD because the JLC boutique, because it was a boutique only watch that under their marketing agreement, Watches of Switzerland still had to advertise, but they couldn't sell it to me.
Yep.
So yeah, I think we talk a lot about like they're losing customers, but under the current arrangement, not only are they losing customers, but they have to advertise for the people they're losing customers to.
Yeah.
Well, but if you're so heavily in bed with the brands that you've got all those boutiques as well, you're not really, all you're doing is handing it over, and that JLC, what's the betting? Watches of Switzerland probably ran that boutique.
I don't think Watches of Switzerland run the Richemont boutiques in Australia, but they were being run by Kennedy. But Kennedy's, it's funny now you're getting into like the back end of there's big movement going on in who's got the management rights of those company boutiques in this country.
Yeah.
No, great one. Well, that was an awesome show. Anybody have any last ones that we missed, or should we wrap it up?
I think I'm all good.
Yeah, all good. Yeah, thank you everyone for really good predictions in the comments as well. We will visit this later in the year, so thank you for being so active in the comments. If you're not subscribed, I'd love it if you subscribed. I'm nearly at 17,000 subs, so if you're not subscribed yet, very much appreciate it, and give it a video thumbs up, and subscribe to Pete at Not So Obvious Watches, Dave at Scottish Watches, and then Seiko
I have
Todd
an Instagram account finally, which is Seiko Todd. Seiko
Todd on Instagram, so you can see some of his great collection on there as well. As always, really, really appreciate you watching. Happy New Year, everyone, and we'll see you next time on Casual Watch Talk Live. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Happy New Year.